With Big Slick Vegas. And for this video, we're going to do what I just call a discussion video, where I'm just going to talk about a couple particular subjects pertaining to Las Vegas. Hope to do more of these, and hopefully maybe in the future I can get another guest or someone else to help along with this. But the topic of this Vegas discussion video is going to be about some of the rebranding of some of the hotels in Vegas, and also we're seeing a lot of changes of ownership in a lot of the hotels, and whether or not this is going to end up being a positive thing or a negative thing, or if there'll be basically pretty much a neutral type of thing, where there won't be any really big changes, positive or negative. We've seen this has kind of been going on really over the last year or so. But now that we've had enough of them, I thought, well, let's go ahead and do a video and kind of discuss this. So one of the first ones we have here, and I'm not gonna spend a whole lot of time on these two, just because there doesn't appear to be a whole lot going on with either one. Now, the first one we have is with the Rio. Now, the Rio for several years now has been owned and operated by Caesars Entertainment. About a year, or I think it was even 2 years ago, it was sometimes right before the pandemic, they decided to sell the Rio. However, they're still managing it. But that's going to expire at some point. I guess the owner whom they went ahead and sold this to is a company called Dreamscape. I don't know a whole lot about them, but I do know that at some point in the future, we are going to be seeing the Rio being converted into a Hyatt property. Way it looks like, and they'll basically take over the hotel and probably also the gaming operations as well. I'm not sure how all that's going to work. Dreamscape will still own the property, but Hyatt will be operating it. And it's going to be kind of like how Resorts World has like 3 different Hilton brands within their property. It sounds like the Rio's going to have 2, maybe 3 Hyatt brands within that property. So you could have one tower that's a Hyatt Regency. Maybe the other smaller tower is going to be like their Hyatt House or one of their other smaller brands. I don't know yet how that's going to affect things. But I think it would be a good thing for the Rio, which has kind of been, at one time was a really nice property. It's a very large property, with the rooms being, they've billed themselves when they first opened as being the first all-suite hotel in Las Vegas, which most of the rooms, I think the smallest room there is like over 500 square feet. So this is a property, though, that Caesars kind of let, while they were operating it and owning it, kind of let go downhill. I've never stayed there, but I've been out there a few times in recent years, and it's okay. So maybe we'll see a big refresh with the Rio once it does become the Hyatt, and we'll see how that works out. But right now there hasn't been a whole lot of news as far as when that's going to happen, so we're just going to have to continue to wait and see what goes on with the Rio. Now with the Venetian Palazzo, of course, for many years that was owned by the Las Vegas Sands Corporation, which is now just the Sands Corporation, since they pretty much wanted out of the Vegas market and wanted to focus on their overseas properties. So they sold that property to a place called Apollo Global Management. And they're pretty much just a proper real estate company, I believe. It sounds like they're more of a hedge fund, if anything. So had to get a drink there. So I would say that it sounds like, from what I'm hearing, that they're probably going to own this property, own and operate the Venetian and its sister property, the Palazzo, maybe 4 or 5 years. They're basically just looking to turn as much profit as they can and then turn around and sell it for a profit. I don't know if that's going to be a good thing or a bad thing. I kind of hope that they don't. Venetian's one of the top properties on the Strip as far as one of the top luxury properties. So hopefully they don't try to resort to nickel and diming more, cutting some of the comps and some of the good offers they normally have for their players. So we're just going to have to wait and see what that's going to look like over the next few years or so. Hopefully if they do, or if or when they do end up selling those properties, hopefully it'll be to an actual gaming company that actually, has experience, particularly in the Vegas market. But we'll just have to kind of wait and see. We're really not going to know much about that really for the next year or so, and we'll kind of see how that all turns out. But we're going to move on now to another property. Now, this property at Bally's is not being sold or anything, but it's going to go through what's called a rebrand. Now, they are owned and operated by Caesars Entertainment, which recently, about a year ago, finalized their merger with Eldorado Resorts. And it's pretty much the Eldorado Resorts management that's running the company under the Caesars Entertainment banner. This, from what I understand, of course, they are going to change Bally's and it's going to become the Horseshoe. Now, this is, of course, a brand that has been associated with Las Vegas for decades now. Binion's downtown, which is now just called Binion's Gambling Hall. A long time ago, it was called Binion's Horseshoe. Now, somehow Caesars got the naming rights to the Horseshoe. I'm not sure how that worked, which hence why Binion's just called Binion's Gambling Hall and not the Horseshoe. So I guess they're going to apply that branding to Bally's. Sounds like they're going to pretty much focus on the, as far as remodeling and doing all that. It's going to probably focus more on the casino area and some of the common areas of the casino. I would imagine they'll do some different things on the exterior as well. I'm sure they're not going to do anything different with the big bazaar shops and restaurants that are in front of Bally's. It doesn't sound like they're going to do anything different with the rooms, which is probably a smart thing because most of those rooms at Bally's have all been recently renovated anyway. So it wouldn't make much sense to be dumping money onto something that doesn't need to be changed yet. I think this will be a positive thing. Caesars does have, in recent years, a pretty good record of rebranding their hotels and having them be successful. They took the Atlanta and turned it into Planet Hollywood, and that's been a big money maker for them and one of their more popular properties in their portfolio. And then, they took the old Imperial Palace, turned that into Quad. That was a miss, but then rebranded it again into the Link, which has been a big hit for them. So I'm fairly confident what they do with Bally's will be a positive thing. And, I think that should work out. The question will be whether or not will Bally's remain a budget property, because it's been long one of my favorite, budget properties on the Strip. Has one of the best locations. The rooms are pretty spacious for as cheap as their room rates can be. So it'll be interesting. Will it remain a budget property within their group, or will they move that up to more of a, certainly not going to be a luxury property, but it could be more of a mid-tier property, I'm wondering. That's kind of goes more along with its neighbor Paris, which happens to be connected to it, and then, going a little farther down the Planet Hollywood. So we will see how that's going to work. I think overall it should be a good, I think it'll be a positive thing. Like I said, Bally's has always been one of my favorite places in Vegas, but I think it could use a good change I think it'd be good because after all, what does Bally's really mean anyway. So giving it that horseshoe and give it a good fresh coat of paint on the place, I think will help out. And this kind of leads into now one of the reasons why they are also changing the naming is they are wanting to is that they eventually sold the naming rights to Bally's. Caesars did, and that's now going to be to Bally's Entertainment. I know doesn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense how all this stuff works, but Bally's Entertainment, and that leads us to our next property, has purchased the Tropicana in recent years. So, with Bally's Entertainment owning the Tropicana, there was a rumor saying that they may change the name of the Tropicana to Bally's. So, essentially, we could have, whereas the old Bally's is going to be changing its name, we could see a new Bally's on the south end of the strip. That, of course, could cause some confusion. The ironic thing is, a long time ago, Bally's used to be the MGM Grand. Then the big fire happened, and they became Bally's, and the new MGM Grand opened on the south end of the strip. So we could see this being called Bally's. Whatever they call it, I would actually prefer them keep the name Tropicana. Tropicana's been going through, it seems like over the last decade, they must have gone through about 4 or 5 different owners and different gaming companies. And the place, I think the place has suffered because of it. There was a time when I first started going to Vegas back in the 90s. Tropicana was pretty much a fun place to go hang out. I even stayed there a couple times, and it's not too bad at all. And from what I understand, it still isn't. They do have a nice pool area. But for some reason, they've lost their vibe. They did a big remodel and rebrand with the Tropicana, as far as, changing the theming of it. Went from a kind of a tropical theming to it. It was, in a lot of ways, kind of similar to the way the Flamingo is. And then they went to this more, I don't know what the fuck type of theme they went to. I think they were going for like a South Beach theme. It was almost like they were, here we have a budget property trying to act like they were more of a mid-tier or even a luxury property, and it just has fallen flat, and the place has lost its vibe, which is sad to see, because like I said, it is a nice property. So hopefully with Bally's Entertainment taking them over, they'll do something with this place and kind of give it a big shot of adrenaline. Hopefully, anyway. There was even a rumor last summer that they were going to sell the demolished old place and put a baseball stadium, which I think is stupid, because I think logistically being right there by the airport and all that, it's just going to cause even more traffic problems anyway. And it's like, anyhow, that's another story, but I don't think that's going to happen. I actually thought Tropicana was a property that Hard Rock should have purchased, but just because of the amount of land that you have there, and the place needs some new management and ownership to begin with. But we'll talk about Hard Rock here later on here in the video. So we'll see what Bally's Entertainment does with this. Whether or not they just rebrand and just call it Bally's, which may confuse some people for a while, or if they just keep the Tropicana or turn it into something totally different. I don't know. Like I say, it's not bad property. It's an easy property to get around. It just needs, once again, it needs somebody who knows what the hell they're doing, who knows how to run a casino and knows how to bring people in. So, hopefully maybe they need to find someone from one of the other established Vegas casinos, maybe someone from downtown to come over and maybe just totally do things differently there, and maybe then they can start getting a better crowd there, getting more of a crowd there, and get more people to stay there. It's like, I've always wondered, with this being a property that's pretty much not part of the MGM group or the Caesars group, hell, if I was running the place, I they already offer free parking on some of their parking. I think there's some parking shortly you're going to have to pay to park there. And obviously for major events going on at the Raiders Stadium or T-Mobile Arena, they probably charge for parking unless you stay there. But they ought to just get rid of the resort fees and just say, hey, let's do something different. If you want to bring people in there, get rid of the resort fees or at least cut them in half and maybe bring back, 3-2 blackjack, get $5, $10 games, $10 craps, $5 craps. Yeah, you might bring in some of the more undesirables, but then again, I know a lot of people, including myself, that like the lower limit gaming, so I don't think I'm an undesirable, at least not yet. I think most people wouldn't say so, but who knows. But, they just need to do something a little different instead of just following the leaders or following the rest of the pack and just kind of figure out what they want to be. Because right now, Tropicana is a budget prop that just doesn't know what it is. It doesn't have an identity right now, so they need to figure out what they are, what they're wanting to be, and just go with it. And maybe they ought to bring back more of the fun island paradise vibe that they used to have and just kind of go with that instead. But we'll see. Like I said, a lot of companies have come and gone with that property, so hopefully this next time around we'll actually see someone who knows what they're doing with this property, or else eventually it's going to get shut down and probably get imploded or whatever. I'm actually surprised, since this property is practically surrounded by MGM properties, that MGM hasn't bought it yet, but who knows, they may still. If this whole Bally's thing doesn't work out, maybe MGM will finally come in and buy it, and who knows, maybe they'll probably tear it down and bring back Wet n Wild, their whole theme park, who knows. But we'll just see. So, speaking of MGM properties, this takes us to one of the more interesting stories, and that revolves the Mirage, which has been originally was owned and operated by Steve Wynn, who eventually sold the property to MGM Resorts, or what was then called, I think, MGM Mirage Resorts. They've owned it ever since. I think this goes back to about the early 2000s. Probably not too long after Steve Wynn bought the Bellagio. Anyhow, MGM announced a few months ago that they sold the Mirage and is going to be bought by Hard Rock. And of course, the transition is probably going to be until sometime next year, in 2023, when the Mirage will become the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas. They, of course, plan on replacing the Volcano with the big guitar-shaped hotel and all that. Of course, Hard Rock was a very popular brand here in Las Vegas for many years, until they decided to shut down their property, which was off-strip, and sell it to Virgin. And it certainly seems like with that, they've been eyeing a place on the Strip ever since, and now it looks like they have landed one. My own thoughts on it, and people seem to be pretty divisive on this, because on one hand, you have people who really love the Hard Rock and are excited to see it back in Vegas, excited to see it back on the Strip. And then you got people who have considered, including myself, the Mirage to be one of the main icons of Las Vegas. It was, for all intents and purposes, the first mega resort that opened up on the Strip, because you have to remember Caesar's Palace, which has become a big mega resort, was probably only a fraction of the size it is now compared to the Mirage, and of course Caesar's now dwarfs it. But it was Steve Wynn and his vision for the Mirage that really led to the big boom on the Las Vegas Strip in the 90s. So it certainly is bittersweet. Now, once again, this is Las Vegas. Things change. We've seen all kinds of classic hotels get torn down, rebranded. If you look at the Bellagio, before the Bellagio, that was the Dunes. Before the Venetian was the Sands. And there's several other. Of course, there was one of my favorites, Stardust, which was torn down, and then finally, about a decade later, here comes Resorts World. So this is a thing that continues in Vegas, but the Mirage is something special. And for me personally, I'd gone to the Hard Rock when it was open in Vegas a few times. It was a long time. It was just not a place. It's a cool place, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't a place I went to regularly whenever I'd come to Vegas. And I'm one that there are Hard Rock hotels all over the country, but there's only one Mirage, and I just kind of wish. And I'm actually surprised the Hard Rock brand's still kind of popular, because Hard Rock, for me, being a Gen Xer, it's kind of a 90s thing that was popular. You go to the Hard Rock restaurants that they have all over the town, or Hard Rock cafes, and then they've gotten the casino business, and somehow, unlike a lot of 90s brands, they've managed to stay relevant. I guess same thing could be said for Planet Hollywood. So it'll be a success. I would have rather seen them either built their own property on the Strip. There's certainly plenty of land, around the north end of the Strip, or even if they went further south on the other side of, actually Mandalay Bay would have been a perfect property if MGM was going to sell a property to them. I think Mandalay Bay would have been a perfect property for Hard Rock to kind of like take hold of. I wouldn't have complained at all if they would have just sold them Park MGM, because I can't stand that property. It's the most boring, dull property I've ever seen. But they certainly weren't going to sell that one, because that's sandwiched in between New York, and Aria. Just Monte Carlo was awesome, but Park MGM sucks. Sorry guys, for those of you that like it, I know it, but that's the only one. I mean, I'd rather go hang out Circus than Park MGM, but that's me. At least Circus might have a shitty vibe, but at least it has a vibe. So anyhow, I think last I heard, it'll probably be around the fall. I think sometime later this year, Hard Rock will take official ownership of the Mirage. It does sound like they want to try and keep all the employees that are already there. So that's a good thing. And I think the actual rebranding and remodeling will probably happen sometime around late 2023. I think sometime around the fall, when it'll officially open as the Hard Rock. I don't know if their new separate guitar-shaped hotel is going to be open by that time. My guess is they're going to open up the Hard Rock officially, and then proceed with building the guitar-shaped hotel that they have. I guess they have something like that in Miami. I think it's one of their properties has that, so we'll see how it goes. I'll be curious to see. I think you're basically going to have one of the tribal gaming companies that are going to come in and run the actual gaming part of it. So that's going to be interesting to see. That is good as far as bringing another operator into the Strip, if they're actually serious with staying with it for the long term, unlike the Apollo company that's taking over Venetian. But we'll see. Maybe it'll be a good thing, if anything, just to have a different operator that's not part of Caesars or part MGM. Being on the Las Vegas Strip might help bring a little competition and see how that goes. The only thing is that I've often heard about, we need more competitors, because obviously more competition, the better the value that we, the customers, are going to get. But I think that's only going to hold true but until MGM or Caesars really starts losing their grip, where instead of having 12 properties, MGM will only have to have 6, 7, or 8. I don't see much changes happening unless a lot of these smaller independent companies decide to do something drastic, like get rid of parking fees, cut resort fees, get rid of resort fees altogether, and just give a better gambling experience. That being said, when I heard the Mirage was being sold, I was hoping that one of the downtown operators would come in and buy it, just because the guys running downtown, whether it's Jonathan Joseph over the Plaza, or Derek Stevens, or at Circa and the D and some of the other ones, they just have had a good reputation over the last few years of just giving the customers a better experience than some of the strip casinos have done, just because they've become so corporate. That I would have loved to have seen a downtown operator come in, maybe the guy who owns Golden Nugget, who actually bought that from Steve Wynn as well. Maybe if he had come in, I think he would have done a good job with it. But we'll give Hard Rock a chance and see what kind of changes they make. Hopefully they're for the better, as far as, obviously they're going to remodel the whole place, but hopefully they can go ahead and maybe make a better gambling experience for all of us that love to come to Vegas. So we'll see, and cross our fingers on that one. Finally, we'll get to my favorite place on the Strip, and it's a favorite of many other people, and that's the Cosmopolitan. Now, as I said, MGM had just sold Mirage. Well, before doing that, they purchased the Cosmopolitan. This is like making a lot of us cringe in the world, especially those that are big lovers of the Cosmo. Just because the Cosmo is just kind of has been an independently run place. It's been the hotel and gaming part of it's been run. It's part of the Marriott family, or was, and it's certainly considered one. Whenever you hear what your favorite hotel is, or the best luxury hotel, it's either, most people are either going to say the Wynn and Encore or the Cosmo. It seems to be 1 and 2, or 1A and 1B with those two properties. And whereas hopefully Wynn and Encore stay right where they're at and not get bought out by anyone, I think a lot of us were not overly happy with MGM taking over the Cosmo for a few reasons. And I don't mean to take a big shit on MGM. I think they still have a lot of properties that I enjoy going to, either staying at or just gambling at. New York, MGM Grand, the Aria, Mandalay Bay, of course the Mirage, Bellagio, and so forth. But they have not had a good record over the last year or so of keeping up with their properties. Now, I think the Bellagio seems to still be as good as ever, but we've already heard, there have been a lot of reports coming where the Aria is starting to go downhill as far as the overall upkeep and maintenance of the rooms, the quality of customer service, which is what the Cosmo's big thing has been. Top-notch customer service, great rooms, great condition, great staff, always very friendly, very helpful. It's got that nice little classy yet not too big of a vibe in this place. You know, recently I did my favorite strip casinos, and the Cosmo was on that list. It's just the perfect size casino. Can't really ask much more than that. It's perfect location, and I think a lot of people are just worried about, including myself, that MGM is going to come in, and instead of doing things the way they've been doing it at the Cosmo, they're going to do it the MGM way, and it's just going to fuck everything up. So hopefully not. So I doubt anyone from MGM Resorts is watching this video, but if you are, my advice would be, when you do officially take ownership of the Cosmo, don't do a damn thing. Just keep the management group that's been, the people that have been actually running the Cosmo, keep them there. Keep them there. Keep them doing what they're doing. Don't change anything, okay? Whatever they're doing, keep it. Just let them do what they've been doing, and just take your percentage of the profits, whatever. Obviously, they're going to change the identity awards over to the MGM rewards. That's to be expected. MGM should take this opportunity, really, instead of making the Cosmo and taking it down to MGM's level, maybe the MGM should take a good look at people running MGM Resorts, take a good look on how the Cosmo does things, and instead of MGMing the Cosmo, maybe they can use what they learned from the Cosmo and what that staff's been doing there to maybe Cosmo the rest of their properties instead. Maybe they can take this and say, hey, maybe we can apply these tactics and this type of training that they do to the Aria. Let's apply this to the Bellagio. Let's apply this to all of our properties, really. Let's make our customer service first and foremost about just that. Will they do that? Are they that smart? Well, they did fuck up the Monte Carlo and turn it into Park MGM, so probably not. But we can always hope. So this is the one that I'm probably most pessimistic about, even though I don't want to be. I know a lot of people are worried as hell right now that they're going to take what is the favorite property of most people that come to Vegas and have stayed there. You know, Cosmo's like really the only luxury property I've ever stayed at the many times I've gone to Vegas, but you know, I've been there a couple times and always want to go back. Always my first choice to go back, depending on what the rates are. But hopefully nothing changes. Maybe it'll get better, but you know, knowing MGM, they'll probably throw out all the in-room fridges and put more wet bars in there, and who knows with them. And they'll probably close out the balconies and just get rid of those. Who knows? They'll probably just glass them in or enclose them. I think that's what everyone's worried about. And then all of a sudden, instead of being able to check in and talk to a real human being when you check in, they're going to have lines of check-in kiosks or whatever. I don't know. But so that's it for this video here, guys. I just wanted to hear what you guys had. I would be very curious what you guys think about all these changes coming up. Please leave a comment below, and I'd really be interested in hearing your guys' feedback on this, and you know, just kind of go from there, I guess. So anyhow, this is the first discussion type of video that I've done, so I hope to do more of these. I'm thinking like the next month probably doing one, basically comparing the 3 newest properties that have opened on the Strip, that being Circa, Resorts World, and Virgin Hotel, and talking about those 3, which one has done the best, which one has done the worst, and all that. I think most people already know the answer to that question anyway. So if you have any feedback on those 3, I'd certainly like to hear about it as well in the comments. So yes, please like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for listening to this video, and we will see you on the next time here on Big Slick Vegas. Thank you.